Hello, everyone. Today, we'll be talking about what is a fiduciary and why should you care? Well, when it comes to money, Dustin, why does it matter that you know what a fiduciary
Yeah,
is?
fiduciary has been kind of a hot topic. We've heard the word a lot lately, and basically, anytime you go get financial advice, there's typically been one of two standards that advisors will follow. Number one is called fiduciary. Number two is called suitability. Now, let's break those down a little bit. Now, if you go see a suitability advisor, what that would mean is that advisor has to recommend something that's suitable. It doesn't necessarily have to be in your best interest, but it has to be suitable. So generally, that's where their boss told them, hey, we're going to be selling XYZ mutual funds this month.
Today.
Go ahead and make this fit your clients.
Yeah, you can almost make the argument that almost anything is suitable,
yeah.
right? I mean, almost anything is suitable.
That's right. I mean, but when it comes to a fiduciary, what that means is that advisor has to look out for your best interest. So they want to understand, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish in retirement? When do you want to retire? How comfortable are you with risk? And then based on what your comfort levels are, they're going to design a plan to help you reach that goal. So they are morally, legally, and ethically obligated to recommend things that are in their client's best interest.
So it is important that you know what that means
Absolutely.
and who one is.
Right, because not everybody in our industry is operating as a fiduciary.
Right.
Like Dustin said, this has kind of been in the news a lot here lately, and so I think some people are kind of under this false impression that everybody is a fiduciary.
Right.
Sometimes with accounts like IRAs or 401k rollovers, sometimes those advisors are held to what I would kind of recall or refer to as kind of like fiduciary light standards.
Yeah.
You know, they kind of have to act like they're doing things in your best interest, but there's no real penalties if they're not. Whereas a firm like Strategic Wealth Designers, we are full-blown fiduciaries on all of your assets or on anything that we recommend. So whether it's an IRA or a 401k rollover or money you have in the bank or a question about insurance or whatever it is we're giving you advice on, what we share with you has to be in your best interest. We have to talk about the pros and cons, which is another big thing that's really different. We have to tell you what's good and what's bad about anything we might recommend to you. You know, under a microscope, there is no perfect place to invest your money. Everything's going to have good things and bad things about it. An advisor that's held to a suitability standard, all they have to do is share with you all the good things. You know, so they might talk about great returns and, you know, the statements are really good looking and the web access is great, but they don't mention to you they're going to charge you 2 or 3 or 4% per year for that.
Yeah.
Whereas a fiduciary, if there are going to be any fees, we have to put it in a contract, we sign it, you get a copy of it, you have to agree to it up front before we were to ever charge any of those fees. So it's a completely different set of rules and standards, and the penalties are completely different. If we do something that's not in our client's best interest, depending on the severity of it, we could pay fines, we could lose our license, in some cases we could go to jail. Someone held to a suitability standard, they are really acting in the best interest of the firm that they represent. So if they recommend something to you that's not in your best interest, there's little to no penalties because, again, they can make the argument that almost anything is suitable.
Is suitable. So what kind, when I'm looking at for a financial advisor, and how do I know someone is really a fiduciary? Is there extra schooling, extra education, what is that?
Yeah, so first of all, I would ask. Now, a lot of times an advisor will kind of dance around that, and they won't answer, yes, I'm a fiduciary, or no, I'm not a fiduciary, because there is a specific advisor that's a registered investment advisor is going to be a fiduciary. We always recommend to work with someone that's independent, meaning they can recommend anything and everything that's out there.
I see.
Where a lot of the suitability advisors that Matt was just talking about, they're usually working for someone, or they're working for a specific product or something like that.
Like a bank or, you know, some of the big brokerage firms on Wall Street, a lot of times they're going to be just held to a suitability standard. So like Dustin was saying, you can certainly ask, but if you ask them, you want to make sure that they're acting as a fiduciary for all of your assets. So if you ask them, you want to ask, do you have to act as a fiduciary for everything that you share with me, or just some of the things that you share with me? It's a big problem in our industry. You know, some regulations have changed recently to try and solve the problem. In my opinion, the regulations or the path that they're going about it right now is just adding more confusion. That's kind of why we're sitting here today discussing the topic. And I think over time, it'll kind of clean itself up. But you know how the government works. You know, it's going to take years for them to
Slowly,
fix
yeah.
some of these issues. And
If at
that's,
all.
Yeah, that's why we're out here today, really just trying to share with as many of our viewers that are watching right now that it's always important, we believe, to work with a fiduciary. I mean, why would you not want to work with somebody that's going to act in your best interest? But again, a lot of our viewers are going to be those that are in retirement already or getting close to retirement. And that's where working with a fiduciary really is kind of something that's a no-brainer that you have to do at that point. It's not really a suggestion. I kind of think it should be a requirement.
Your brother-in-law may not be the best person.
Right.
They may be a great person,
might be
but
good.
doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be able to act in your best interest. Sometimes your brother-in-law is working for a firm where they have quotas, or a regional manager that's coming in and putting pressure on them to recommend things that are good for the firm, but might not be good for you.
So when you're looking for this person, you want to make sure they're fiduciary. What else do you want to make sure they are?
Well, as I mentioned, as an independent firm, and what I mean by that is if someone's working for the bank, they're probably going to recommend everything that you have fits something that the bank offers.
see.
Or let's say they're an insurance firm. Well, everything that you have is going to go into an annuity or in life insurance, or they're going to recommend what they have to offer. Or like Matt was saying a while ago, Merrill Lynch or one of the big brokerage houses or something like that. They're going to say everything fits stocks, bonds, mutual funds.
Yeah.
Well, it's important to work with all of those. You want some things in the bank, you want some things in brokerage world, you want some things in insurance. So you need a little bit in each, and an independent advisor is going to have access to all of that.
All right. So the word of the day is fiduciary, and if you want to know more about it, all you have to do is go to the website. It's swdgroup.com. Stay tuned for more Strategic Wealth with Matt Dicken. It's right after the break.
But with the taxes being as low as they are right now, it might be time to start thinking about doing some conversions.
Look, nobody's born knowing how to plan for retirement. So why not start your retirement education the same way thousands of Kentuckiana couples have? By attending one of our educational seminars created and hosted by financial professionals at Strategic Wealth Designers. The retirement professionals at SWD will show you ways to make informed decisions. For many, this workshop was the first stop on the road to their successful retirement. Register for an event that works best for you at swdgroup.com/events.
Welcome back. I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about 401k plans and when and where they're really appropriate, and then when and where to start thinking about maybe an IRA as an option. Now, I will definitely agree that 401ks are certainly a better option than not having anything at all going on for retirement planning. But once you reach maybe 59 and a half or really even 55, it's time to start thinking about what other options are out there and available. There's three main reasons that I always want to roll the money from a 401k into an IRA whenever that option is possible. And I know a lot of times people will leave a 401k at their employer just because it's been growing fairly well for them. But we typically will recommend if you're no longer with a company, your 401k shouldn't be either. The number one reason for this is really to increase your investment options. Now, 401k plans are typically designed with one goal in mind, and that's to grow the assets. They're typically a plan that's sponsored by an employer, so you're obviously still working. So the investment options that are in there is typically a few growth funds, maybe a couple of balanced funds, maybe a bond fund or two, and then a money market account. Well, those could be good accounts, but they're not necessarily geared towards retirement planning. They're geared towards growth in the portfolio. The second reason that we want to think about rolling over money from a 401k would be tax planning. Now, I know taxes have been a hot topic here over the last year or so because of the recent tax law changes, but inside of a 401k, you're limited. You're growing the money tax deferred, which is better than being hit with a tax bill every year. But with the taxes being as low as they are right now, it might be time to start thinking about doing some conversions. Maybe moving that money over from a qualified retirement plan that you haven't paid any taxes on, maybe into a tax-free investment that will now grow without having to worry about taxes later on in retirement. I mean, I know right now taxes are probably the lowest that we're going to see in our lifetime. Now, that's not guaranteed, obviously, but taxes are likely to go up in our lifetimes.
So why not go ahead and bite the bullet now and get those taxes out of the way and let the money start growing tax-free so that what you have in your account is really what you keep in your accounts. Because taxes are real uncertainty. You may have $500,000 in your IRA or 401k, but what is that really after taxes? Is it 300? Is it 400? You really don't know because taxes are likely to change over time. So you want to start trying to roll that money into a tax-free account whenever possible. And then the third reason to start thinking about rolling your money over from a 401k would be to really get your arms around and control what's going on. I know a lot of times that people will feel like, well, I have a 401k at this employer that I worked at for 10 years, or I've got another 401k over here that I worked at that employer for 4 years. And you've been seeing some decent growth over the last year, so you feel like you're in the right types of investments. But a lot of times what we find is that's just not the case. You may have a lot of different accounts, but you don't really have any true diversification. You don't have the left side working necessarily with the right side. You always want your investments to complement each other and make sure that if you have a risky investment here, that you've got something a little more conservative over here. So you get your arms around how much risk you have, how much fees are actually going on inside of those accounts. That way, if you got them in 1 or 2 different accounts instead of 4 or 6 different old employer accounts, now you can really start thinking about retirement planning. Most companies at 59, once you reach the age of 59 and a half, will allow something called an in-service rollover. And what that means is, well, maybe if you got 2 or 3 years left to work, you're not going to retire yet, but you want to go ahead and start thinking about retirement planning. So most companies realize that. So at 59 and a half, they'll allow you to exercise that option called an in-service rollover, where you keep the plan in service, you keep contributing for the next year or 2 or 3, however long you plan to work for, maybe get that match for the next 2 or 3 years, but they allow you to take what's in that account, what's accumulated over the years, they'll allow you to roll that over into an IRA account. Once it's in that IRA account, now you can start working with a true financial professional or someone that understands different investment options and different objectives, and they can help you structure that plan to move into retirement or maybe even throughout retirement. Typically, if you have a 401k plan, there's maybe a guy that comes in or a gal that comes in once a year. If you're lucky, they may come in quarterly, and they'll help you to rebalance that account, or maybe they'll help you move a couple of things around. But they're not looking at the big picture. They're not looking at what your expenses are, what type of retirement that you really want to have. And they're just using a number as based on your age, and that may not necessarily match up with your goals. So if you have that option, the best way to find out if you do would be to ask your HR department, does our plan offer an in-service rollovers? Some companies don't even make you wait until 59 and a half. Some will allow you to do it whenever you want. So if you have that option, it typically would be in your best interest to go ahead and exercise that. Move it over into an IRA. Start thinking about taxes and how to be more tax efficient during your life. Start thinking about diversification. Are you in the right investments to accomplish the goals and objectives that you really have throughout your retirement? So if you have any questions about your accounts, check us out on our website or give us a call at the office.
You then have to just decide, well, can I, on average, earn a better return than, say, 3%?
WHAS 11 salutes Strategic Wealth Designers as a leading retirement and wealth management firm in Kentuckiana. The advisors at Strategic Wealth Designers have been helping retirees and pre-retirees live a safe and stress-free retirement since 2002.
Hi, and welcome back. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking today about mortgages and whether you should or should not pay it off. We get questions all the time in our office about, I'm retired, I've got to pay my mortgage off. But is there really a rule of thumb, or is there kind of a best practices when it comes to this?
Yeah, you know, I think, Dustin, this is one of those decisions or discussions that comes down to really 2 important factors.
Yeah.
And I would really make the argument that one of the 2 is more important. What I'm talking about is there's financial implications, you know, the financial data on analyzing it. But I think more important is the emotional side of analyzing this decision as well. You know, if you want to look at the financial or factual information, interest rates right now are pretty low, right? And performance for most investment vehicles or portfolios has been pretty good, right?
Yeah.
So what you want to do is you want to look at the deductibility of the interest. with the tax law change, the standard deduction went up by quite a bit. So,
Right.
so not as many people are going to be itemizing their deductions anymore. So maybe the interest rate deduction on their mortgage isn't as attractive.
Yeah.
But if you're able still to deduct the interest because you're itemizing your deductions, you may still have a nice benefit. So if you have, say, a 4% interest rate on your mortgage, but you get to deduct it, maybe the true cost after tax deductions is maybe 3%.
Right. Yeah.
You then have to just decide, well, can I, on average, earn a better return than, say, 3%? And of
Right.
course, the answer there would be yes.
Yeah.
You know, even in a fairly conservative environment, we're able to generate a return much better than that. So, from a financial standpoint, it wouldn't make sense in that scenario to pay off the mortgage. You know, why would you take money out of an investment account to pay down a mortgage where you're earning more on the investment account than what the mortgage is costing you?
Right.
Why would you do that? Well, the reason why you would do that, and that's the second factor that I mentioned, that is the emotional aspect or the emotional desire of just being completely debt-free
Yeah.
and not owing anybody any money.
I
for
keep going
anything.
to retirement and owe the bank this. or-
Right, you know, so if you're laying in bed at night, you know,
yeah.
worried, not able to sleep,
Yeah.
then even though we can prove to you on paper or running an analysis or something, even though we could prove to you that you would be better off not to pay the mortgage off, if you
Yeah.
just can't live with that decision,
Yeah.
then you should pay the mortgage off.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that we'll recommend a lot of times is we'll have clients that maybe they don't have the money sitting in the bank to pay the mortgage off, but maybe the money that they could pay off the mortgage is in their 401k or their IRA.
I get that one a lot.
So a lot of times people will ask, well, should I, before I retire or after I retire, you know, should I take, we're going to owe another $120,000 still on the mortgage. Should I take that out and just pay the mortgage off all at once? A lot of times we recommend against that.
Yeah.
Because that has the potential, depending on other income, to throw them in a much higher tax bracket.
Yeah.
Right. So in order to have the $120,000 to pay off the mortgage, they may have to withdraw 180,
yeah, 180.
180,000 or 160,000 in order to net after tax enough to pay the mortgage off. And that's usually not the best way of doing it.
Yeah.
What we'll recommend, as long as individuals are okay with it, is maybe rather than taking all the money out all at once, maybe take a little extra out over a 3 or a 4 or a 5 year period.
Chip it away.
Yeah,
Instead of,
chip it away. So maybe don't pay it off this year, but maybe over the next 5 years you'll get it paid off. That's usually a little better way of going about it. Now, if individuals are still struggling with the idea of just owing somebody some money, one of the things that I'll point out to them is there's been a lot that's been said over the years. Some people have built entire careers on recommending that individuals should get out of debt as quickly as possible.
Right.
And there's some good things to that, but I will say that there is a big difference between being in debt
Right.
and utilizing leverage.
Leveraging, yeah.
If you will, almost every Fortune 500 company uses leverage to their advantage. The way I define debt is, let's say that you have a car loan, as an example. If you stop making your car payments, well, somebody's going to come take the car, right? You're in debt.
Yeah.
But let's say that you have the money in the bank to pay off the car loan. If you lose your job or something happens you didn't anticipate, you can no longer make the car payments, but you could still write a check
Right.
to pay the car off. Well, you're not in debt,
Right.
You're using
Using the
leverage.
bank's money. Right.
You're using the bank's money to your advantage. So the same thing is true with your mortgage. If something happened and everything hits the fan, if you really wanted to, you could go take the money out of the IRA or the 401k or the bank or whatever the situation is and pay off the mortgage.
Yeah.
So you're not really, in that scenario, in debt. You're using leverage to your advantage. And those are two really different definitions or two different ways of viewing things. But some people struggle with that, where they just want to get everything paid off as quickly as possible.
So what you're saying is really there is no right or wrong answer to paying off the house.
I don't think so. I think it comes down to personal preference.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I've been helping individuals for well over 20 years now. And we've helped thousands of couples, make these types of decisions. And factually, you can prove the numbers, right? But life isn't always just numbers, right? Life is living and feeling good about your decisions and being able to, be comfortable with those decisions. And so from a financial standpoint or a factual standpoint, we can prove all day long probably that we can get a better return than whatever the mortgage is costing them. But some people just have that strong desire, which I get,
Yeah.
to not owe anybody any money at all for anything.
Well, what about the other side of that? I know there's advisors out there sometimes that will tell people to go get a home equity line of credit and let's go invest this. Would you say that's the right or wrong thing to do? Or?
I think that those are very rare situations where something like that could make a lot of sense. If you don't have the money to invest without doing that,
May not be.
it may not be the best thing
Right.
to do. You probably can't technically afford it.
Yeah.
I know some people that have done that, and it's paid off and it's worked well for them, but they understand this idea of leverage
Right.
versus debt. And if the investment that, the investment that they made, if it had not worked out, they would have been able to pay the mortgage off.
Right.
A lot of our viewers aren't going to be in that situation.
Yeah.
Whereas if they did that and they made an investment and it didn't work out, they would have some issues and some problems. So it's going to be very, very rare that those things would make a lot of sense. I feel differently, though, if you want to talk a little bit about reverse mortgages.
That was my next question.
Because I think a reverse mortgage can be something that could be beneficial. But again, I think that should maybe be kind of like a last, the last option. That's when after you do something like that after you've explored all the other options and there's just nothing left.
Yeah.
Then doing a reverse mortgage can work out. In order to get the maximum benefit from the reverse mortgage, though, you need to have the house paid off.
Right.
So there's really no right way or wrong way of going about it. I think it comes down to personal preference in most scenarios, and I understand there's a strong desire by almost everybody to, at some point, have their home completely paid off and own it free and clear.
Great. Well, as you can see, there is no right or wrong way to answer that question when it comes to the mortgage. But if you have a question about your financial situation or whether or not it makes sense for you to pay off the mortgage, give us a call at our office and schedule a time to come by and meet with one of our advisors.
Now, you can earn better than guaranteed interest rates because the interest that you earn each year is going to be calculated by a certain index.
Look, nobody's born knowing how to plan for retirement. So why not start your retirement education the same way thousands of Kentuckiana couples have, by attending one of our educational seminars created and hosted by financial professionals at Strategic Wealth Designers. The retirement professionals at SWD will show you ways to make informed decisions. For many, this workshop was the first stop on the road to their successful retirement. Register for an event that works best for you at swdgroup.com/events.
I want to share a little bit of information with you specifically about variable annuities. Different types of annuities have been in the news recently, and I want to talk about maybe what's good and what's possibly bad about each of them. The different types of annuities that you have basically at this point to invest in are going to boil down to fixed annuities, index annuities, or variable annuities. Now, with a fixed annuity, it's just what it says. You earn a fixed interest rate that's guaranteed for some period of time. Right now, interest rates are low. They're going up slowly, but interest rates are low, so we're not really big fans of fixed annuities right now. If they were to get back to where they've been in the past and start paying 6 or 7 or 8% interest again on a guaranteed basis, then obviously that would be pretty attractive. But right now, interest rates are just nowhere near that. You also have index annuities, and with an index annuity, sometimes there's a guaranteed interest rate, sometimes there isn't. But what is guaranteed is that you'll never lose any of your principal or your growth. Now, you can earn better than guaranteed interest rates because the interest that you earn each year is going to be calculated by a certain index, and usually the most popular index that is used is the S&P 500 index, but there are a few others to choose from. And then variable annuities are kind of the third annuity that's available right now, and that's really just a collection of mutual funds inside of an insurance account. So variable annuities have the upside potential of the market, but they also have the downside potential of the stock market as well. Now, I know when you look at these three different options, some may be a better fit depending on your situation than others, but the one that we see that's recommended the most often is the variable annuity. And one of the reasons why I think that could be happening is because variable annuities have typically the highest commission structure of any of the options that are out there. Basically, variable annuities pay the second highest commissions of any product that an advisor can recommend to you, second only to hedge funds, which obviously is just typically recommended for only a very small percentage of society. So very surprising, right? The one that pays the highest commission is usually what individuals have most often. So we have a problem in our firm with variable annuities, and one of the big problems that we have with them are, of course, their fee structure. Now, depending on the variable annuity that you may have, you're going to have management fees, you're going to have administrative fees, there's turnover fees, sometimes rider fees or mortality and expense fees. When you add all of these costs together, they can add up to be somewhere between typically 3 to 5% per year. We've seen them go as high as 8%. Unfortunately, that is rare, but 3 to 5% is pretty common, pretty typical. So let's say you're just paying 3%, which would really be on the low end on a variable annuity. If you have $100,000 invested in a variable annuity currently, that means that you would be paying about $3,000 per year. And again, it's every single year. So over a 10-year time period, 3% in fees on $100,000, well, that's $30,000 that gets lost. If you have $1 million over 10 years, that means that you're going to lose about $300,000 if your fee structure on your variable annuity is at the low end of the spectrum. So one thing we always recommend when individuals have money invested in a variable annuity currently is to get a fee analysis done. You want to find out exactly what your fees and expenses are. And when you get this analysis done, we have a program that we run that will take a look at what the total fee structure is. Sometimes you can try and read your statement. You might see quarterly there's some fees coming out, or maybe you can even go to the prospectus and try and read through that document. Usually those are pretty thick and difficult to read through. You can find some of the fees in there, but it's kind of like a cat and mouse game. It's really hard to pin down exactly what your overall cost structure is. So you don't have to search through those big documents or go through past statements. We can find out for you exactly what your fees and expenses are that you're paying. We put it in a simple, easy to read, one-page report. We'll put in a percentage amount, we'll put in a dollar amount, and again, we'll total everything up for you to show you exactly what the cost is. Once you know what the cost is, then you can make a decision whether you want to keep that variable annuity or not. Now, the good news is probably about 90% of the time, you are not stuck with that variable annuity. We'll meet with individuals all the time, and they'll say, well, you know, gosh, I didn't realize that the fees were that high, but there's nothing that I can do. You know, I'm kind of stuck. I have to wait another 2 years or 5 years or 6 years because there's going to be some sort of a surrender charge, or I made some sort of a time commitment when I originally went into the account. Again, the good news is probably about 90% of the time there are ways around those, and you can get out of that variable annuity and you're not going to have to incur these large expenses. Now, we cannot avoid these surrender penalties all of the time, and if you were in a scenario where we couldn't avoid it right now, then we can maybe make some recommendations within that variable annuity to try and reduce the overall internal fees and then just kind of wait out the time period. But that's rare that we have to do that. Probably, again, like we said, about 90% of the time you are not stuck with that variable annuity. There are things that you can do to move that money into something that would cost you a lot less in fees and expenses so you can keep more of your hard-earned money for yourself. So if you have a variable annuity and you have any questions about how much you're paying in fees and whether or not you can do something different, then feel free to give us a call at the office. We'll schedule a time to sit down and discuss your situation with you.